Hola, soy Jeremy Suárez, la voz de Koda en Tierra de Osos.
Sí, conmigo. ¡Koda!
Se necesitan cientos de personas para crear una película animada y cada una tiene un talento especial. Pero hay una labor de la cual tal vez no hayan escuchado. La gente que hace los efectos de sonido, o como ellos se autonombran, artistas de Foley. Hice una visita al foro de Foley para ver cómo se hicieron los efectos de sonido en Tierra de Osos. Hola, chicos.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Hola.
Tú eres Jeremy, ¿no?
Sí.
Mucho gusto, soy John.
Igualmente.
Soy Allison.
Ella es
Hola,
Allison,
mucho
mi
gusto,
socia.
Es un
Allison.
placer.
Y este es el lugar donde hacemos los efectos de sonido.
Un artista de Foley usa todo tipo de objetos caseros y mucha chatarra para crear los sonidos y efectos que se escuchan en las películas. ¿De dónde viene el nombre de Foley?
Ah, esa es una buena pregunta. Foley viene de un hombre llamado Jack Foley que desarrolló esta idea a finales de los 40.
¡Wow!
Un día pensó, en vez de editar a mano todos los efectos de sonido, que era el procedimiento de antes, dijo, ¿qué tal si los grabamos en sincronía con la película? El secreto del Foley es que aquí no hay reglas.
Wow.
Cualquier cosa que te venga a la mente y creas que pueda resultar, inténtala y si suena bien, eso es lo correcto.
Y como sabían que saldríamos en televisión, ¿arreglaron el lugar?
Lo creas o no, arreglamos lo mejor que pudimos.
Sí, claro. Pero mientras más me mostraban el estudio, me daba cuenta de que hay un método para este desorden.
Bien, Jeremy. Lo que vamos a hacer es una pequeña escena en la que Koda aparece y tú harás sus pisadas.
Ah, claro.
¿Quieres?
Sí.
Lo que vas a hacer es que cuando veas que mueve sus patas, tomas esos guantes y haces... Eso, bien, ¿listo?
Sí, estoy listo.
Hay que decirle a Mary Jo cuando estés listo.
Listo, Mary Jo.
Aquí vamos.
Ya.
Que nos diga Mary Jo cómo estuvo.
¿Cómo estuvo?
Excelente.
Eso.
Bien.
Dame la mano. Muy bien. Esto era parte de una silla.
¿De una silla?
Sí, sé que es un pedazo de bambú, pero si vienes aquí y haces esto, va a crujir muy bonito. ¿Sí? Y cuando Kenai se queda balanceando de un árbol, nos va a dar un
Sí.
gran crujido. Bueno, adelante, ¿estamos listos, Mary Jo? ¡Súper! Ahora Kenai está por chocar contra algunas cosas y cada vez que lo haga, tú y yo haremos esto. ¿Listo?
Sí.
Digámosle a Mary Jo.
¿Listos, Mary Jo?
Ya está. Muy bien. ¡Súper!
Ahora que soy un artista de Foley oficial, vamos a ver la película con mi laborioso trabajo incluido. ¡De lujo! ¿Qué tal? ¿Qué no viste la trampa? Yo la vi a kilómetros. Debe ser muy penoso. Suena bien, pero mejor me quedo en la actuación.
Hi, this is Rob Rupel. I'm art director on Brother Bear, and it's a bit like being a lion tamer.
Hi, I'm Byron Howard. I'm the supervising animator for Kenai as a bear, and being an animator on Brother Bear was kind of like being a lion and being tamed by Rob.
When we first started looking at the characters, we really looked at the Inuits, the Eskimos. They had the most authentic look to the type of characters we were going after, as opposed to American Indians, which is a very different look. This is one of the early sketches of the two brothers. Really tried to keep a real Inuit feel to the characters when we were first starting out, knowing that as the process went along, you were going to lose more and more of that. We did look a lot of good photo reference, and they had all these crazy tattoos and face painting. This one really started to capture the flavor of what was going to become Kenai. Minimum face paint, the high forehead, the clothing's getting more simplified.
And that's something we have to deal with in 2D animation, is simplifying the costume.
This one's pretty much what Kenai started to look like in the design sketch. I'd say this is 90% of what he became.
This is a turnaround of the Kenai human character, and we do these in animation so we can show our animation crew how to draw the character from every particular angle. The Kenai human character has a very similar shape to a standing bear, and that was a very intentional decision by the directors. All the animators in the film had these images up on their walls to make sure that we were drawing bears correctly. There's that very distinctive bear posture, shoulders in front, that big hump in the back. The hump is particular to the grizzly species, other bears don't have that. Oh, he's cute.
The mass in this, the dimension and the planes and the mass of the bear in this one was so nice. It has a real sculptural quality to it.
And that's one of the nice things about the bears, that they do have this beautiful blousy coat of fur, this huge mane that comes off their muscular neck. This is when Kenai was getting really close to his final form. I had taken this drawing and done my drawings for the maquette. I tried to keep the proportions for the maquette very, very close to this particular drawing and just change the attitude just a little bit. And we try to give the animators and the sculptors as much information as we possibly can when we're putting the characters down on the page, and just make sure they know what every angle of the character is going to look like. Coda?
This is Coda when he's a little heavier, which is very cute. This is Coda when he's a little skinnier.
They played around quite a bit with Coda's appearance, trying to determine how old he should actually appear, because he's supposed to be a little bit streetwise, and they figured if he was too young, then that really wouldn't make any sense, that he kind of knew his way around the forest.
Yeah, you really start to see his attitude coming through, and he's going to be a fun character. He's going to be the one who helps Kenai.
The moose.
Yeah, once again, we started out with very naturalistic drawings of how they're designed, how they're made, how big their noses are.
This is an early development drawing of Took, I suppose, nice attitude. Rut and Took.
This kind of gives you a feeling of what kind of characters they are and what they do all day, and maybe not the brightest.
But charming. This is from an early animation test of Rut.
Look at these expressions, too.
Yeah.
They're just great. Took's a little bit bigger. We try to make them look as different as possible while keeping them very believable as moose. Tug's a great character. He's just this huge bear who's twice the size, 3 times the size of any other bear. I love those tiny eyes, and I'm glad we kept that on him.
Yeah.
It just makes him seem so much more massive to have these tiny little beady eyes.
Originally, Brother Bear involved a large bear very much like him called Grizz, and instead of Coda guiding Kenai through the woods, Grizz did. Mabel?
Kind of an older bear. She picks up that dandelion, and the little fluffy things come off.
Again, keeping that caricatured look.
Even down to the little age spots on her. You gotta realize this drawing was done 3 years ago. She hardly evolved in that it stayed really true to the inspirational sketch.
I love this drawing. This was one of the first images I saw from the film, and I went, I really cannot wait to work on this movie. We're trying to figure out how the bears were going to ride on the mammoths and kind of use them as taxis. We came up with this great idea of using them as kind of this easy chair on 4 legs. Here we have a size comparison chart which shows each of the characters in relative size to one another so that we know how they'll interact when they're in a scene together.
We were lucky enough to actually go to Alaska and see these animals, and for me, more importantly, their environment. When you sit there in front of these animals or in front of these landscapes and have to translate it into drawing, you understand more, you become much more intimate with how they're put together. These are some sketches of doll sheep and moose and some of the flowers that grow up there. This is a photograph of just a stream in Wyoming that we kind of came across and then we all sat down and sketched. This is one of the watercolors that I did, and just really quick, really simplified. This is Moran Falls in Yellowstone Park. So this is my quick little watercolor, an oil painting version of the same thing.
That's very nice.
Old Faithful. You can see the similarities, but also, the differences. This is one of the big geyser pots in Yellowstone. It's like being on the moon.
That's great.
Yeah, isn't
Great
this?
feeling of atmosphere.
Look at these great tree shapes. An early drawing of showing the scope and scale that we were after in these landscapes.
This is where a wide format film really pays off. Adds a measure of grandeur to the rest of the film.
Another drawing of this glacier that's encroaching upon this landscape. They come in, they flatten trees, and then they recede. This is another glacier drawing. They're crazy like that.
It's like Mars.
Yeah.
Bizarre.
The brothers hunting the caribou. This one captures the layers of atmosphere that we saw up in Alaska.
This one's almost sci-fi.
Yeah, it's a huge block of ice way in the distance. It's so far in the distance that you think it's a mountain. We want this landscape to be awe-inspiring.
Great scale on that. Those are little boats, canoes?
Yep, the little kayaks, the brothers kayaking.
Yeah.
This is a neat early drawing of what it's like when Kenai and Coda are underneath the glacier, and they're hiding from Denahi, and they're looking up. The setting for the bear party when they finally get to the big salmon run. Another early development piece when the brothers were hunting the caribou in the very beginning.
Wow. That is a big mammoth.
You just can't make a mammoth big enough. One of the ceremonies, Kenai's manhood ceremony. This is when the brothers returned triumphant from the hunt to the village. We looked through a ton of books on primitive architecture and found that a lot of people can build with bones and stuff, so we told the guys, well, try something, where you've got a couple mammoth tusks out front and maybe they put an elk skull on top. And this is an early design for the funeral pyre. This went through a lot of different iterations. We ended up using something like this in the film. It's actually a bunch of moose antlers tied to a big totem pole and set on fire, and you'll see during the funeral that there's several of these around. The original funeral moment here, we were going to have the funeral take place on an outcropping of rock. Our head of layout came up with this idea about, well, what if it's this crack in the rock? We thought, oh, that's different.
When we start getting the film a little further into production, they start pulling out particular scenes from the film.
It's a really good way to figure out, is this going to work or not?
Again, Grizz and Kenai.
Which later became Coda.
Beautifully lit, beautifully painted, just very atmospheric. Just has a great, quiet, grand feeling to it.
We wanted our spirit animals to have that real sort of primitive cave painting feel to them. So this is an early caribou design. And this is one of the primitive designs for like a deer or an elk. This is a bison.
This is really interesting just because of the negative space they use to form the horns, the lack of that line in the front of the horns that delineates the edge of the skull.
One of the biggest design challenges in the film was, okay, how are these northern lights going to come down and turn this guy into a bear? And so we had a bunch of people work on several different concepts, and this is one of them. And I like this one. I like the grittiness and the texture of it. And we've got scenes very similar to this where Kenai is surrounded by these aurora spirit animals as they run all around him. This is where he's approaching the column of light/water. It looks like light, but it behaves like water. This stuff's a little bit closer to what eventually became the transformation sequence. It starts off with all these different groups of animals coming out of the light, and then the wolves come out and circle him.
The color palette goes really intense.
And this is where the wolves are swirling around him. The next one is the wolves leaving him. At one point, we were going to have the elders start coming through, and these are the great spirit elders.
I always like that image with the antlered elders in there.
And at one point, a big bear is going to come out of this sort of field of grass. You see Kenai going up into the sky, and he swirls around, and you see a bear's head shape very briefly, and then he becomes the bear. This is Kenai coming down from after all the transformation, and he's a silhouette, and it's like, well, I'm not sure. What happened to him? What is he? Pretty true to what we have in the film. For the longest time, our ending was the brothers get together every year and wrestle and play around under the northern lights. I still love that image because it was such a quiet little wrap-up,
Thank you for letting us share these images with you.
Hopefully you gained some insight into what we spend our lives doing, and, thought it was kind of cool.
And please enjoy the film.
Thanks.